So Arsenal versus Liverpool draw 2-2. I'm just going to go and jump into it. Let's talk about the controversial moments in this game. I'm an Arsenal fan, so take this with a grain of salt. I'm going to try and be as partial as possible because I don't like fanboyism in any shape or form. So right off the bat, 5 minutes in, you have Virgil van Dijk kicking Kai Havertz twice, and Kai Havertz actually falls to the ground. It's like, think of like what people call kick out, where like he kicked his feet out from under him. The way that this starts is that Virgil has the ball, he passes the ball, Kai's kind of coming at him. Virgil kind of extends his, after he passes the ball, he extends his arm out and kind of like, I wouldn't say clatters into Kai, but kind of gives him almost like a hip push. Kai kind of grabs his arm and like grabs his shirt, and at that point, that's when Virgil snaps and kicks him once and then kicks him twice. The second kick comes in. And so this has been really controversial because we get the free kick. You have Anthony Taylor acknowledging that he saw what Virgil van Dijk did, and like he mouths it to him. He's like, I saw what you did. And he awards the free kick, but people are upset because obviously it's what they would consider violent conduct, and that would instantly be a red card. That being said, it's the start of the game. You know, you were only 5 minutes in. It's like at the very least, it should be a yellow card to kind of caution and say like, hey, like, don't do that again. So I was surprised that we didn't get at least a yellow. There are some people who are have argued with me that like Kai Havertz should have gotten a yellow for pulling the shirt down. But it's just kind of like a weird thing because there's always tons of shirt tugging in the game. Sometimes the shirt tugging gets a yellow card because of the fact that a player is on the ball and like they get shoved out of it that way. And so like it becomes this annoying thing where a ref will give a yellow to it because it's happened multiple times. In this case, none of them had the ball. Like, you know, they're just kind of like wrestling with each other. Like it seems like Havertz is trying to like maybe just bother him a little bit, but get around him. Like Virgil just doesn't like it and kicks him twice and gets caught. And so it's one of those moments where it's like, okay, like we didn't get a yellow. A lot of people wanted a red. They even more so wanted a red because obviously Virgil van Dijk went on to score Liverpool's first goal, which brought them tied with us. And so people were even more mad because it's like, well, like if he would have gotten a red, that wouldn't have happened, which is the correct way of thinking about things, I would say. But what's weird to me is that VAR didn't actually like look at the event, because literally last week you had VAR intervene in events outside of the penalty area. I think of the kudos West Ham Tottenham situation where you know, Tottenham's player gets up after getting kicked 3 times from a player who like kind of looked like he was just trying to stop himself from for his momentum from running, and he gets up and pushes him, and then in retaliation he like pushes him in the face to the point where you know, like a scuffle breaks out. And this is one of these situations where it's like, you know, the reaction that Virgil van Dijk had to Kai Havertz, like, you know, shirt tugging kind of outweighs the shirt tugging. Like you kick a player twice to the point where they fall down. Now maybe you can argue that Kai like take a dive on the second kick, but like you can clearly see the kicks, and like Virgil does like this spin where like it does throw Kai off of his feet. So, you know, like it's one of those things where it's like, why didn't VAR intervene? Like, you know, it wasn't a yellow. VAR didn't like review the incident and upscale it. Is it one of those situations where VAR can only intervene if it's a yellow card? And then they're like, well, it's a yellow, but we want to intervene and actually make it a red card. Are those the only moments where those situations happens? And a lot of people have been talking about this because the standards of reffing have really kind of been brought into attention in terms of in a negative light. Feels like every season that I've been watching so far, like people get more and more frustrated with the PGMO as well as VAR. And, you know, this weekend is no exception. Before the Arsenal Liverpool game, we had a West Ham versus Man United where West Ham got a penalty kick that they probably shouldn't have gotten because there was like a handball in the box, like in the buildup of that. And then I believe Chelsea also got a penalty that shouldn't have been a penalty because it was like a clattering of bodies or something like that. I didn't watch the game, but I've been watching a lot of the chatter behind it. And so, you know, you get to this point where, you know, there's a lot of Arsenal fans that feel like the ref body, the PGMOL, is actually out to get us. And like when you kind of watch some of these calls and things that happen in our games, like you start to feel like maybe like the tinfoil hat isn't so crazy after all. But the reality is that I just think that the reffing is super inconsistent throughout every game, and that the only reason we have like such a big spotlight is because we've been trying to, you know, win the Premier League for, you know, like what, like 5 years now. And like we've come closer and closer and closer, and now we've kind of been put into the spotlight because of the fact that even since the start of the season, we've had so many calls that have been kind of crazy. Like, think back to that Wolves versus Arsenal game where you had one of the Wolves player grab Kai Havertz by the throat and not get a red card. Think about in the same game where that same player, did like two fingers to Gabriel Jesus, like pretty much giving him, kind of like a prostate check mid game, and Gabriel Jesus pushes him, and Gabriel Jesus gets a yellow card. And you can see it in the replay, you can see it, after the game, everyone was talking about it, and yet nothing was done about it, right? And that was just the start. We've had red cards given for kicking the ball away. You had the Declan Rice situation. You had the Trossard Man City situation. The Declan Rice situation was even more egregious because he got essentially kicked, and the kick wasn't like he got kicked, got a red card, and he also got injured. Not injured, but he got kicked in the process. Trossard, red card versus Man City, and now we have this game where a lot of people have have called it. Like, I was listening to the commentators talk about how Luis Diaz should have gotten a yellow card for kicking the ball away when one of our players got fouled and we were going to take a free kick, and he kicks the ball away. And then every Arsenal player is like, "What? Why isn't he getting a yellow card?" And nothing comes of it. The commentators live while the game was going on made note of it. You had Men in Blazers tweet about it and show clips of every time we got a yellow card for kicking the ball away compared to this situation. And so, like, it's one of those things where, like, that standard is not being applied to all the teams in the league. Now, I will say, I don't think that kicking the ball away should be a yellow card in general, like, at all. I think that it's a BS call. I think it's a BS yellow card. I think that it doesn't do anything for the game except ruin it. Obviously, because those rules have been applied to my team twice and other teams, like, it's like, well, we want to see it applied consistently for this season and then just drop it. Like, we don't want to ever hear about a yellow card for kicking the ball away again. But, the rules are in play right now, and we've been punished for it, and it feels like nobody's getting punished for it. So the tinfoil hat, like, you start to add more tinfoil to it as you kind of go on. So there's that. There's the Virgil van Dijk situation that everyone's talking about, showing replays of it. There's the Luis Diaz kicking the ball away, not getting a yellow card for it. Then you have the situation where at the end of the game, we should have gotten a corner. Very clear as day, a corner. Gabriel Jesus, Tsimikas kicks the ball. Last touch of the ball, Tsimikas. We don't get a corner. It's a goal kick. The game ends. Gabriel Jesus is like, hey, like, that should have been a corner. Like, he's arguing his case. He ends up getting a yellow card from Anthony Taylor at the end of the game. And now you have all these replays showing that it should have been, a corner kick. And it's one of those situations where it makes me think back to a few seasons ago where Anthony Taylor was one of the refs that got demoted to the championship because of his bad calls. And it was a bad call against Wolves, I believe, that got him demoted to the championship. So, like, again, we're dealing with a ref who overall throughout the most of the game was pretty good, but there are these calls where, like, you're kind of like, dude, like, that's a little, like, crazy. So it makes you wonder a little bit, right? But moving on, there are two other calls that I feel like could go either way, right? There's the penalty on Martinelli where I think Trent Alexander-Arnold and this other player kind of sandwich him. The other player kicks through Martinelli to get to the ball, but supposedly there's a reverse angle that shows you that they actually got to the ball first, but like by like a toe. But it's hard to tell because the angle that everyone keeps showing, like the replay that we keep saying, it just looks like he kicks through Martinelli to get to the ball. So, there is that one aspect where you're just like, all right, like, there, like where's the other angle of this? Why didn't VAR say, like, hey, let's just do a review, show it up on the screen so that everybody can be happy? Because again, you're dealing with two title contenders, right? You're dealing with the teams that are at the top of the league, who last season were also neck and neck. Like, there's a lot of hype built into this game. There's a lot of, like, like, you're like, this is like the pay-per-view match. Like, we want to see these things and we want to see them kind of ruled efficiently so that we can say, like, all right, like, we just lost because, we played very defensively in the second half and we switched off and we lost like we always do. Or like we conceded a goal like we always do, right? But then you have these situations and these calls where it just gives people more fuel to their fire that, like, like the league is out to get us or whatever. But there's that call, right? Like, that call could have gone either way. I think the one that's the people really have an issue with is also the final call where we could have gotten a third goal. there was a foul called on uh, there was a foul called on Kiwier on Soboslai. It's a header. He wins the header, but it looks like he uses Soboslai's shoulder to kind of propel himself and hoist himself for it. But it's one of those things where it doesn't look like that's the case because Soboslai doesn't it doesn't look like there's any force on him. Like he literally just kind of tucks his shoulder down because he felt the arm and then just like walks it off like nothing. He didn't try going for the ball. None of those things. Kiwier is already a tall guy and he wins those aerial duels pretty often, if I'm not mistaken. So it just seems weird that you're calling a foul on that and you're resetting the play, and you also didn't call the foul up until you had Kai Havertz who were set up to take on the goal, and it ricochets off the post, but you still there's still enough buildup and advantage being played that, as you saw, like Gabriel Jesus gets that goal in. So it's like at that point, as the ref, shouldn't you just let VAR handle it and say like, hey, there was a foul here, I'm not entirely sure, can we do a VAR check? But he blows the whistle, and because the whistle's blown, like they just go with the on-field decision, and they say like, well, the whistle was blown before the third goal, so therefore as VAR we cannot intervene, pretty much. So those are kind of like the most controversial moments. I think there were like a few smaller ones throughout the game. Overall, I think we played really good in our first half. We had that amazing Saka goal. But towards the second half, like we just switched off like we always do. Like even if we're only one goal ahead, like we start like parking the bus or whatever. People call us the dark arts of parking the bus. There's nothing wrong with playing a defensive game. The problem is that it's really boring, and then you invite a lot of pressure and you essentially concede a goal, which is what happened, right? We had that Mohamed Salah, Nunez kind of like team up. I believe it was Trent Alexander-Arnold who kind of set that pass up to get that emotion. And so it's one of those things where like, these things happen and we switch off, and then like we just don't have that attacking threat throughout the second half. Granted, there were like a few chances that we could have had, but towards the very end, we had Gabriel towards the back, our center back, Gabbi, like he got to the point where he couldn't even run anymore and he had to be subbed out for Kiwior. We had Timber, who also I believe got subbed out because he couldn't anymore. So like we had a pretty defensive, like mid to obviously your black line is going to be defensive, but like we just had like a more defensive structure with the players that we were using, because obviously like a lot of our other more attack focused players were out on injury. I think Calaflor is out. Saka obviously got taken out because he's still recovering. I believe who else is out? I believe we have got a few more players that are out. But yeah, obviously Odegaard is still out, who really is the guy who kind of like structures and gives us a lot more going forward and more creativity to kind of break down teams. So we had those situations, but I also think that Arteta could have just done a better job at doing better substitutions, or like bringing substitutions a little bit earlier to kind of get them established onto the game and get the flow going better. But obviously it is what it is. Like we conceded that goal, like that's entirely on us. Like we switched off completely, and the first goal was a complete switch off as well, right? Like somebody should have been blocking that pocket, nobody was. These things happen, and so we leave with just 1 point. We drop points, Liverpool drops points, and that's the story of our season. And I brought this up in a YouTube short that I made, where it's like, I am worried about our kind of like halftime switch off, where we just kind of play defensively and we don't really kind of go for it. And I do kind of miss a few seasons ago when we had that X factor, where even if we were a goal down and there was always that hope that we were going to get that goal and we were going to get the 3 points, right? Like you think of that Reece Nelson Bournemouth goal. We just don't have that this season. And I don't know if it's because we've matured a little bit more and we're just like, well, we're playing the Prem, we're playing the Champions League, like playing all these other competitions, like we're going to go win a trophy elsewhere. We can't spend all of our energy in one thing. Or if it's just one of those things where like we're just not, like we're getting, like the longer we go on, the more shaken up we get. I don't know. It's a little weird, but those are my thoughts on the Arsenal versus Liverpool game. And yeah, let me know what you think. Peace.